Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be discussing my August 2025 State of the Collection. I currently have a three-piece collection and I keep my three pieces in this Mirage Luxury travel roll. On the left we have my Pequenet Concord 40, in the centre we have my Rolex Submariner date 126610LV Starbucks, and on the right we have my Rolex Submariner date 16610 respectively. So what's changed since my previous State of the Collection review? Well, I added my Pequenet Concord 40 heavy hitter. So why do I call it a heavy hitter? Well, as you know, I previously reviewed the Concord 40 anthracite version, and I really like that piece. For a long time I have been searching for a blue dial daily wear piece which could also be worn as a dress piece, but however I couldn't find anything I fancied that I hadn't already owned. In my previous State of the Collection reviews you will have seen I have owned several blue dial watches previously, including the San Martin SN020G, the Vostok Amphibia, Seiko Dress KX and my Rolex Oyster Perpetual 41. They all had blue dials and they were excellent pieces, but however they didn't fully satisfy my need for a daily wear or dress piece with a blue dial. Then I came to realisation recently. I recently reviewed a Vulcain skin diver which had a vertical blue satin finish dial. Previously I've owned pieces which had a sunray blue dial. So for example, my Vostok Amphibia had a blue sunray dial, as did my Seiko Dress KX and also my Rolex Oyster Perpetual 41. And I really like blue sunray dials, but however I reviewed the Vulcain skin diver and I realised that I actually prefer vertical satin finishing to sunray blue dials. I dislike textured dials, I dislike matte blue dials, but I also like glossy black enamel dials and glossy blue enamel dials because I like the shiny finish to the dial. So I like the Vulcain skin diver's vertical satin finish dial, but the problem was it's a diver and I already have a Starbucks and a 16610, so I didn't want to add a third dive piece to my collection because that would be 3 dive pieces, it would be excessive. I really wanted a dress piece or a daily wear piece with a blue dial. And then I realised that Pequenet make this piece, the Concord 40, which I really like, but it has a vertical blue satin finish dial and it's fantastic. I immediately fell in love with it. So what I did was I asked Pequenet to make me one and size the bracelet perfectly to fit my 8-inch wrist. And this is something I really like about Pequenet, something that other mid-tier brands and mid-tier micro brands don't do. They make the obelisk bracelets like a bespoke suit which is tailor-made to fit your wrist size. So for example, you can tell them your wrist size in centimetres. 20 centimetres is 8 inches, and then they make the obelisk bracelets rather like a bespoke tailor-made suit to perfectly fit your wrist size. And the benefit of that is when I took this piece out of the watch box for the first time and put it on my wrist, it perfectly fits my 8-inch wrist. I didn't need to resize the screw-pin obelisk link bracelet. And when I say it fits my wrist to perfection, I can easily slide an index finger beneath the butterfly clasp and bracelet at all times. This is the correct sizing method. So to remind you and clarify, the reason why an index finger beneath the bracelet and clasp is at all times is the correct sizing method is because it allows for wrist expansion when your wrist expands in warmer weather or when one is active, because the index finger of expansion is the right amount. Now, the other benefit of the index finger method in sizing is because it allows for wrist expansion when it swells up, it prevents excess shear load being placed on the pins, regardless of whether they use push pins or screw pins, same applies. If you don't have that expansion of an index finger gap, what happens is the pins get put under excess shear load. That elongates the holes in the links and also expedites the wear of the pins themselves. And they become ovalized and then the bracelet becomes sloppy. And this really is the reason why bracelets become slack, they become sloppy. And this applies to Jubilee style bracelets, Oyster style bracelets, flat link bracelets, beads of rice bracelets, all bracelets, H-link bracelets inclusive. Excess shear load, it expedites the wear. So the thing to do is if you use the correct sizing method, as so, this reduces the shear load on the pins. But the other thing is it makes it more comfortable. It enhances comfort level and feel good factor because throughout the day when your wrist expands or contracts, the bracelet never feels too tight and it never feels too loose. And as you can see, the obelisk bracelet on this piece is stellar. Beautiful luster to it, beautiful mirror polishing to the obelisk links. Now this piece is named after Concord, the Concord Square in Paris, which has an obelisk, and that's the inspiration for the obelisk profile to the links, hence the bracelet name, obelisk link, and also the Concord name. Pequenet released this in 2023 to celebrate 50 years of Pequenet because the brand was founded in 1973. It has 50 years of heritage. And that's something I really like about Pequenet. And it's another realisation I've come to through my watch collecting and my State of the Collection reviews. You'll know from my previous State of the Collection reviews, I have owned a plethora of homage watches made by low-tier Chinese brands such as Pagani Design and San Martin. But recently I came to realisation I have a dislike, not of homage watches, but of the lack of brand heritage of Chinese low-tier brands, AliExpress brands. And that's the reason why I can never bond with low-tier Chinese-made AliExpress pieces. And it's not that they're an homage to Rolex, Tudor or Omega. The problem I have is the lack of brand heritage. For example, San Martin are well established. They were founded in 2012 by Govan and Lao Jiming. Govan was the founder of Ironwatch, and Ironwatch is now rebranded to Hester. But originally, Govan and Lao Jiming were friends and business partners, and in 2012 they founded San Martin together, and they began producing Rolex, Tudor and Omega homages such as the SN004G, which was one of their first Rolex homage pieces, and they sold very well. They followed the well-proven business model of Gunther Steinhardt with Steinhardt's Ocean 139 and Ocean 142, which of course are homages to the Rolex Submariner date. So San Martin really have applied the proven business model of Steinhardt, producing Rolex, Tudor and Omega homages. But the point is, they are well established since 2012, so at this stage they have 13 years of brand heritage. But for me personally, 13 years just isn't enough brand heritage, and that's the reason why I just can never bond with low-tier Chinese homage pieces. It's not the fact they're an homage to a Rolex, Tudor or Omega, it's the lack of brand heritage. Even well-established brands such as Peacock and also Seagull, which were founded in 1955, they're two of the oldest Chinese brands, I just cannot bond with the lack of heritage. Pequenet have it because they were founded in 1973. So in 2023, they celebrated their 50th anniversary. And of course, that brand heritage really appeals to me. There's something else that really appeals to me about Pequenet and this Concord 40. It's made in France, and it has a made in France manufacture caliber. So to clarify, the brand was founded in 1973, and then in 2011, they became a manufacturer. What that means is they began to manufacture their own in-house calibers in Morteau in France. Rather than buying in movements from Sellita, such as the SW200-1, and then decorating it or modifying it and branding it as their own Pequenet caliber, they started to make their own calibers. And that's something I really appreciate about Pequenet. They have the ability to make their own movements. They do not need to buy in movements from ETA. They do not need to buy in movements from Soprod. They do not need to buy in movements from Sellita. They are a level above other mid-tier brands and mid-tier micro brands. So to remind you and clarify, mid-tier is 500 to 5,000 euro, and at 4,000 euro this is clearly a mid-tier piece, but in reality it's not a mid-tier piece. Why do I say that? The reason why I say this is a heavy hitter is because it is the ultimate champagne watch for lemonade money. Now some of you are going to be watching this and say, well, it's not champagne watch for lemonade money at 4,000 euro. 4,000 euro is not lemonade money. That's true. The reason why I say it's a champagne watch for lemonade money at 4,000 is because it's the respective price point. At the end of every review, I always state, well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, it should meet two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. The important point is respective price point. 4,000 is the respective price point. So this can still be declared champagne watch for lemonade money, even though 4,000 euro is not lemonade money, clearly. Because in reality, this is not a 4,000 euro piece. What we're looking at is a 10,000 euro quality level piece. Pequenet have undervalued this. If this were 6,000, or if this were 8,000, or even 10,000 euro, I would still say it is excellent quality and excellent value at 10,000. That's the reality, because it's that quality level. If this was Swiss made, with a Swiss made in-house caliber, it would be 10,000 plus euro. That's the reality. But because it's made in France, and the in-house caliber, the manufacturer, is made in Morteau in France versus Switzerland, it's only 4,000. So one is getting a 10,000 euro level piece at 4,000. They have undervalued it by €6,000. And that's what makes this the ultimate champagne watch for lemonade money. It cannot be beaten. When I reviewed the anthracite version, I fell in love with it. I thought it was fantastic. It's one of the greatest champagne watches for lemonade money I have reviewed, but I wanted a blue dial version. So I asked Pequenet to make it with an 8-inch bracelet, and they did, and I wanted to try it out on wrist and see if it met the other two criteria. So you'll know from my previous reviews, state of the collection reviews, there are two key elements, two key criteria watches have to meet in order to be put into my collection. They have to be excellent quality and excellent value to be champagne watches for lemonade money, but the other two criteria is comfort level and feel good factor. This piece does not meet comfort level and feel good factor criteria. It exceeds comfort level and feel good factor. I've reviewed over 500 watches on my channel. Everything from a €20 Casio F91W to a €24,000 Rolex Sky Dweller inclusive. 500 plus pieces. This is one of the most, if not the most, comfortable watch I have reviewed and owned. It feels weightless on wrist. There are three things about this watch, above all else, that I absolutely love, and it's something that Pequenet can do that other mid-tier brands between €500 and €5,000 cannot do. First one is the thickness. This is only 9.7 millimeters. It is incredibly slender. If this were quartz powered, or if it were mechanical manual wind powered, 9.7 would not impress me. That's nothing unusual. To have a quartz powered or mechanical manual wind piece below 10mm is nothing special. For an automatic with a rotor, to be under 10mm is incredible. This is 9.7. That is the benefit of the in-house manufacture caliber. It's very thin, and therefore they've slimmed this piece down to only 9.7. Even though it has an exhibition case back, which adds some thickness, 9.7 is fantastic. So this doesn't just meet the criteria of being comfort level and feel good factor, it exceeds it. So very low profile. Anything below 13 easily slips underneath a business shirt, so practical daily wear piece. Also can be worn as a dress piece because of the obelisk bracelet. So 9.7 is one factor. Another factor is this is only 141 grams. Now it's 40mm on an integrated bracelet. I would expect this to be circa 150 plus for a 40mm, but it's only 141. Now bear in mind it's 141, but it has a very long obelisk bracelet to fit my large 8-inch wrist, as you can see. I would expect this bracelet to add significant heft to the piece, but it doesn't. Now again, this is something that Pequenet can do that other mid-tier brands cannot do. Often integrated bracelet pieces, the problem with them is the integrated links are too thick. I'm not talking about the taper, I'm talking about the actual thickness of the links, and I'll take it off and clarify this to you. What I like about the Concord 40 obelisk bracelet is the thickness. If you look at the links, this is the kind of thickness one gets with an oyster style bracelet. It's very thin. It's rather like a flat link bracelet. It's not like a president style bracelet or a jubilee style bracelet, or alternatively beads of rice bracelet, which have thicker links. Pequenet have slimmed down the thickness of the screw pin links in the obelisk bracelet. And this really does enhance the comfort level, but it also deletes a lot of the meat from the obelisk bracelet. And this really enhances comfort level because the obelisk bracelet can articulate freely. It's very silky smooth. But the other thing is the lack of meat, the lack of thickness on the bracelet means that it feels very comfortable to wear. And so many other mid-tier brands and mid-tier micro brands that make integrated bracelet pieces, they cannot do it. What they do is first of all, the problem is the head of the piece is like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel. It's 13mm thick because often they will use the SW200-1, which is thick. And of course, the rotor needs additional clearance so that the exhibition case back doesn't foul it, and often they'll use the box top pack crystal or a double dome sapphire crystal. But even when they use a flat sapphire crystal, the head of the piece ends up being 13 plus thick, and the slab side flanks make it look like a block of 316L grade stainless steel sitting on top of the wrist. This wraps around the wrist, it curves around the wrist like a tonneau case. The other thing about it is the obelisk links are like female pivotal end links because they allow the end link in the obelisk bracelet to articulate, rather like pivoting female pivotal end links. And this again enhances comfort level and feel good factors. So many mid-tier micro brands and mid-tier brands with integrated head of the pieces and integrated bracelets, they cannot do it. They cannot get the articulation right. We've all seen integrated pieces And the problem is they have a stiff end link in the integrated bracelets. And then what happens is the end link in the bracelet is like a male end link, and it sticks out too far from the wrist. And then you get this abhorrent gap beneath the tip of the integrated lugs and the integrated bracelet. This doesn't have it. The integrated obelisk bracelet pulls close to the wrist. The articulation is fantastic. So lack of thickness is 1, 9.7 millimeters. Lack of heft is 2, 141 grams. There's one other thing, above all else, and they do this better than Rolex, Tudor and Omega. This has an incredibly slender rehort. It's one of the thinnest rehorts I have seen, and I've reviewed over 500 watches. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus. Just look how slender, how low profile the rehort is. This is thinner than the rehort on my Rolex Oyster Perpetual 41. It's incredible. It's thinner than the rehort on the Rolex Datejust 41 I previously owned as well. Rolex are not capable of making a rehort this thin. This sapphire crystal sits so close to the second hand on the top of the cannon pinion, it looks like it's touching it. It sits so close to the dial, when you look at the piece straight on, the crystal looks invisible. The AR coating is stellar. The sapphire crystal has stellar clarity. So what you're looking at is, you're looking at the dial with perfect clarity. There is zero distortion and zero magnification effect, because the sapphire crystal is very thin. It only provides 50 meters of hermetic seal, which is perfectly acceptable. But the point is, it's so close to the handset and so close to the dial, it actually looks invisible. So clarity is enhanced, and also it looks very aesthetically pleasing. Again, we've all seen mid-tier pieces, integrated bracelet pieces, but the problem is they're powered by the SW200-1, and they have a very deep rehort, which is necessary to provide enough hand stack height on the cannon pinion. But when you're looking at this piece, the underside of the sapphire crystal sits incredibly close to the second hand in the top of the cannon pinion. It looks like the second hand is touching the sapphire crystal. That's how close it is. And this is thinner than Rolex. Rolex cannot do it on any of their pieces. The Rolex Datejust, the Oyster Perpetual, the Daytona. I have reviewed them all, and I own a Starbucks and I own a 16610, and they have much deeper rehorts. And this is something that Pequenet do much better than other brands, and it's something that I really like about their pieces. The Concord 40 really is peak Pequenet. It's the very best of Pequenet. This is thin rehort, and it's only 9.7 millimeters. It's just fantastic. So comfort level and feel good factor, the criteria isn't met, it's exceeded. Of all the watches I've reviewed on my channel, and of all the watches I've owned, this is one of the very best. This is the ultimate champagne watch for lemonade money. I absolutely love it. It looks fantastic from every angle. And what I like about it is it's got the brand heritage since 1973. The other thing I like about it is this is not an homage. Now one could say, well, it does look 1970s. It looks like it's inspired by Gerald Genta design, which is true. It has that 1970s look, rather like the Patek Philippe Nautilus and rather like the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. But however, this is not an homage to the Patek Philippe Nautilus, nor is it an homage to the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. This is an original design. The obelisk link bracelet is inspired by the Concord Square in Paris, which has a famous obelisk, hence the obelisk profile to the links, and hence the name of this being Concord. It's named after the Concord Square in Paris with the obelisk. So, since 1973, this does look like 1970s Genta design, but it's not an homage to a Genta piece, it's an original. And I like the Concord 40, it's not an homage, and I like the brand heritage. And that's something I've come to realise. I dislike the lack of heritage of Chinese-made low-tier pieces, AliExpress watches, homages to Rolex, Tudor and Omega. I like originality and I like brand heritage. I like watches that are made in France, and I like pieces that have an in-house calibre made in France. That's the truth of it. So I've grown to dislike homage watches. I prefer originals, and I've grown to dislike low-tier Chinese pieces from AliExpress. So next we'll move on to the king piece in my collection, which is my Rolex Submariner date 1266 LV. The LV in the reference denotes lunette verte, which in Swiss French means green bezel. LV, reference number, lunette verte, is also used on the Kermit, the Hulk and the Starbucks because they all have green bezels, lunette verte. I previously owned the Hulk, which is the 116610 LV, back in 2018 before I started my channel. And I like the Hulk. I like the green sunray dial, and I like the green ceramic bezel, which is made from Cerachrome inlaid with platinum. But however, I prefer the Starbucks black glossy enamel dial with the green bezel. I think the black dial and the green bezel looks more aesthetically pleasing than the green sunray dial and green bezel used on the Hulk respectively. As I detailed in my previous State of the Collection reviews, I dislike the maxi case used on the Hulk. The lugs are too thick. Rolex made a mistake, and I think they realised that, because on this version, the 126610 case, they slimmed down the maxi case lugs, and this has thinner lugs but a larger lug width, but it's better. Proportion of the oyster bracelet is better, proportion of the slimmed down lugs is better than the maxi case used on the Hulk. Of the two, this is better looking. Feel good factor, comfort level are better. Taper is good. Glide lock style clasp I think is too large, as I've detailed in my previous State of the Collection review. I prefer the proportions of the glide lock clasp used on my Hulk, because of course that had a better proportion bracelet. It used the 20-16 perfection personified taper versus a 21mm lug width. This does have a nice aggressive taper which does balance the head of the piece, but the problem is it has a larger glide lock. The Hulk glide lock is lower profile. In thickness, width and length it's better, but subjectively this is a better looking piece overall. I really like it. It is the king piece of my collection. Comfort level and feel good factor are satisfied. Absolutely love the green bezel with black dial, much better looking in my opinion than the green sunray dial and green bezel of the Hulk respectively, which I owned in 2018. So next we'll move on to my favourite piece. Collectors often talk about a Holy Grail piece, and for me it will always be the 16610. My first Rolex Submariner, which I purchased when I was 21 after 2 years of saving up from 19 to 21, I've talked about this in previous State of the Collection reviews, was the 14060M, which was a two-liner and it was a no-date Submariner. It was one of my favourite watches that I've owned, and it was the watch that first sparked my interest in the Rolex Submariner and watch collecting. And I can honestly say the 14060M, which is the no-date Submariner, and the 16610 that you're looking at, the date version, they are my two personal favourite Rolex pieces of them all. I prefer this piece to my Starbucks, and it may come as a surprise to you. As I've detailed, the Starbucks has a superior calibre, has the 3235, which is a chronology movement, superior power reserve, and technically it's better. But I actually prefer the 3135 in this piece. For a plethora of reasons. It's quieter, but the other thing is when you are setting the time, when you rotate the crown clockwise, the hands move clockwise. With the Starbucks 3235, it reverses the gearing and therefore it rotates the hands the opposite direction to the crown. I dislike that. So, of the two pieces, this 16610 is my personal favourite. What I want to do, and I meant to do it in my previous State of the Collection review, but I actually didn't, is I want to compare the Superluminova, which is green on this 16610, with the Chrome Light, which is blue, rather like BGW9, on my Starbucks side by side. And I want to show you the difference in performance in terms of the potency of the exciters, because aesthetically I prefer the green tone of Superluminova. You'll know this from my previous reviews. C3 is one of my personal favourites versus BGW9 and Chrome Light. So I'm just going to, as always, use my 100 UV LED torch to charge them both up to their absolute maximum. And then I want to compare the 16610's Superluminova, which is like green C3, to the Chrome Lights used on my Starbucks, which is like blue BGW9. Right, so they're both now fully charged. Now bear in mind, on the left, the 16610, just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on both. On the left, the 16610 is a 2010 piece, and the camera's struggling to autofocus on both, but I'll get it to do it. So on the left we have Superluminova, and then what happened was this piece, the 16610, was discontinued in 2010. So this was the last one made. It was made in December 2010, and therefore it's highly collectible. And then in 2011, Rolex released the 116610 LN, which was its successor. And then they changed from using green Superluminova to using blue Chrome Lights on the 116610 LN, which I've previously owned and reviewed. This Starbucks on the right also uses the same Chrome Lights on the 126610 LV, and you can see the difference in performance. Now in terms of potency of the exciter, they're similar, but however the performance on the Starbucks on the right is superior, and it's not down to the potency of the exciter, it's actually down to the maxi dial layouts, because on the Starbucks it uses a maxi dial layout. The indices are enlarged. On the 16610 on the left, I'll charge it up again because the camera's struggling to focus on it. On the 16610, the indices were smaller. Now, the thing to note is, on the Kermit version, the 16610 LV, Lunette Vert, with the green bezel, they used the maxi dial. So they had enlarged the indices to the maxi dial layout. So that's the difference. The Kermit has larger maxi dial indices, but the standard 16610 doesn't. They're smaller. And you can see the difference in performance because the maxi dial on the Starbucks with the larger indices is better, simply down to the larger plots, the larger area of the chrome lights applied. They both have 6 layers, of course, but you can see the difference. Potency of the exciter is similar. Now bear in mind, on the left, the Superluminova is 2010 to 2025, so it's now 15 years old. But unlike tritium, it doesn't patinate with time exponentially. It doesn't develop a patina. Camera's struggling to focus. There we are. But you can see the performance is similar. Now bear in mind, on the left it's 15 years old and on the right it's not. But chrome light doesn't degrade with time like tritium. It doesn't patinate, doesn't develop a patina. That's the negative. I actually like tritium on vintage pieces from the 1960s and 1970s and 1980s when the tritium develops a peach tone. I think the peach tone of patination is very aesthetically pleasing. And that's something that Luminova, Superluminova and chrome lights doesn't do. It doesn't patinate. But I prefer when green C3 Superluminova ages and it develops that lovely peach tone on vintage pieces. And that's the negative of Superluminova on this 16610 on the left. It will never do that. It won't patinate as per tritium. But of course, again, it doesn't degrade because unlike radium and tritium, it doesn't have a half-life. It's not radioactive. So that's the benefit. Of the two, I actually prefer the green tone of the Superluminova, which is like C3 on the left on my 16610, to the blue tone of chrome lights, which is like BGW9. Now, of course, chrome light does perform better. So one could argue that the Lume Pip performs better on the Cerachrome bezel. And of course 6 layers of chrome lights, which is like BGW9. This is stellar performance. It cannot be beaten. It's the ultimate. But I'll charge up the other one to the maximum. I'll get it to focus. I just prefer the green tone, aesthetically. It's a shame that Rolex changed it. I would like to see them upgrade from the standard Submariner date dial layout used on the 16610 when they succeeded it with a 11610LN with a maxi case and the maxi dial layout. I think they should have continued using the green C3 Superluminova, as you can see, because this is absolutely gorgeous looking. It does visually look very similar to tritium used in the 1960s, 1970s and 1980s. And then what happened was Rolex succeeded the tritium with Luminova and then later Superluminova. This is a 2010 16610, the very last made in December, so therefore it uses Superluminova versus the earlier tritium. But you can see it has a similar green tone to it. I prefer the green, but it's aesthetic, and of course this is subjective because the majority of collectors obviously prefer the better performance of BGW9, and of course they appreciate the fact it's not going to patinate as per tritium. So of the 3 pieces, this 16610 is my favourite. This is my Holy Grail piece, and if I had to choose one piece out of the 3, it would be this. The 16610 will always be my favourite. It's an iconic piece. It's the greatest Rolex piece ever made. And although the 3235 chronology movement in my Starbucks is technically better with a higher power reserve, I actually prefer the 3135 used in this piece because, as I've detailed, and I'll demonstrate it again to clarify for those of you that haven't seen my previous State of the Collection review, I'll show you why. This 3135, when you pull out the crown to the time setting position, when I rotate the crown clockwise, the hands move clockwise. When I rotate the crown anti-clockwise, the hands move anti-clockwise. That's the industry standard, that's the convention. But with this Starbucks, which uses a chronology movement, the caliber 3235, it doesn't do that. And I dislike this. When I pull out the crown to the time setting position, when I rotate the crown clockwise, the hands move anti-clockwise. When I rotate the crown anti-clockwise, the hands move clockwise. It reverses the gearing. This is the negative of the chronology movement. The other negative is it uses ceramic ball bearings. Now, from a technical perspective, one could argue, well, ceramic is hard wearing. It's harder wearing than steel, and therefore the ball bearings used in this chronology movement, the 3235, are superior. The ceramic ball bearings are not going to wear down in time as per steel ball bearings. but the problem is they're more noisy. When the rotor spins round on this 3235, you can hear it, it's more audible. I dislike it. In terms of how loud it is, it's not more loud than a Miyota 9015 or a Miyota 9039, so it's not very loud as per an 8215, an 8000 series, which are very noisy. But nonetheless, the 3235 ceramic ball bearings are louder than the 3135 used in this 16610 because they are steel. And I prefer the quieter rotor on this piece. It sounds quieter on the wrist when you move the wrist, and it automatically winds bidirectionally. So technically the 3235 is more efficient, used in the Starbucks. It's a better movement, higher power reserve. They both have 10-year service intervals. Previously, the 3135 had a 5-year service interval because it used mineral oil. And then what happened was Rolex developed a high-performance lubricant for the new chronology movements, such as the 3235, which is used in a plethora of Rolex pieces, such as the Yachtmaster, Datejust, and this Starbucks Submariner date. Same 3235 is used in all. And what they did was they developed a high-performance lubricant, and the benefit of that is it's like synthetic oil used in engines. It has polymer in it, and the polymer reduces friction, and the benefit is it extends the service interval of Rolex movements from 5 years to 10 years. So, Rolex are still using the high-performance lubricant in both the 3135 and the 3235. So, when this gets serviced after 5 years, Rolex will strip the movement down, ultrasonically clean the parts, rebuild the movements, and then add the high-performance lubricants, and that will extend the service interval from 5 years, which was the case on the 3135, to the new 10-year service interval of this movement, the 3235. So they both will use the same lubricants after servicing. They will both have 10-year service intervals. The cost of servicing is the same. It's €700 in 2025, and the €700 service price of the 16610 is the same as the €700 service price of this Starbucks. And that includes stripping down the movement, ultrasonically cleaning it, rebuilding it, lubricating it, and then regulating it to superlative chronometer accuracy. Also includes polishing the case, laser welding any dents in the case, and also brush satin finishing it, and of course brush satin finishing the bracelet, which is rebuilt. €700. Now that's €700 every 10 years, and as I've detailed, if you break that down to per annum, that's only €70 per annum. €70 per annum over 10 years, €700. It's negligible. The cost of owning a Rolex Submariner date 16610 is the same as owning a Starbucks 126610LV, €700 or €70 per annum. So service costs are the same. I prefer the 3135 due to the direction of the hands when you're setting the time, and also the rotor is quieter. But of the two pieces, the 16610 is my personal favourite. So I'm absolutely delighted with my Pequenet Concord 40 heavy hitter. Is there anything else I fancy? No, I'm absolutely satisfied. I've reached a state of the collection where it's unusual because collectors always fancy something else. They always want to add another piece to their collection. I'm satisfied with these 3 pieces because I now have what I wanted. A blue dial daily wear piece, which can also be used as a dress piece. I also have the Starbucks, and I also have the 16610, and I wear these pieces in rotation randomly. For example, I might wear a piece for 3 days or 5 days and then switch to a different piece, or I might wear a piece for a week and then switch it, or wear it for 2 weeks. It's completely random. I don't wear the watches for 1 week each or 1 month each. I simply pick up the watch that I fancy wearing for the day. They all feel good on my 8-inch wrist. Comfort level is good. Feel good factor is good. €4,000 for the Concord 40 heavy hitter. Starbucks is 14,000, and the 16610 was new old stock, so 13,800 because it was new old stock, fully protected in plastic films, unworn, box and papers piece. Very rare to find a December 2010, one of the very last 16610s ever made, highly collectible as a result. Purist Rolex collectors like end of production pieces. December 2010 was when the 16610 was discontinued and succeeded by the 116610LN in 2011. This is a highly sought after piece. So I like all 3 pieces. The other thing I like is this is a Mark 1 Starbucks versus the Mark 2, so the green is better on the bezel. It's more like the Hulk Cerachrome. I dislike the Mark 2 green. I think the green is too dark. I prefer the lighter green of the Mark 1, as I detailed. Absolutely love the blue dial of the Concord 40. So there's nothing else I fancy. This is perfection personified. It's the three pieces that I really like. And feel good factor, comfort level is met. Excellent quality, excellent value. So hope you've enjoyed my review of my August 2025 State of the Collection. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.